Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tristan Cure, and I'm currently a one-way dual language teacher in West Chicago, Illinois. I currently teach third grade, and in 2017, I graduated with my master's in curriculum instruction at National Louis University, and it had an emphasis on ELL and bilingual curriculum. So today I'm here to talk to you about a strategy that I use in my classroom that I'm able to use to really hone in on all four of the language domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So the activities that I'm going to show you today is called Art to Start, is what I like to call it. Some teachers call it different things. And what it is you allow students to use materials that they have at home or in the classroom to write their own story. And you can give a student the same picture and you can get 23 different stories out of the same picture. And it really brings that cliche to life: a picture's worth 1,000 words, because all of those words are going to be very different from the perspective of your ELL student in your classroom. So I was going to just talk to you about that structure today and how I use that in my classroom. So what it looks like is simple materials you can find at home. So for example, coloring books is one thing that I have my students go to a lot in my classroom. This is from my daughter's library. It's a look and find book that we could use. You could use wordless picture books. You can use, you can use magazines, Scholastic News, pictures they find off the internet, anything that is going to give them an image. You want to give them some think time. It's really important with English language learners that we give them think time so that they can collect their thoughts. And then you want to tell them that it set up a routine for writing that allows them to free write, and make sure that they know the expectations is just for them to get their ideas from their head onto the paper. So things that I look for when my students are doing this is, first, I'm just looking to see if they're engaged in the writing. And if they're not engaged, I'll go over to them and just start talking to them. And this is something I urge parents to do when they are working with their child at home, is just to sit down and talk to them and ask them what they're writing about or what they see in the picture, anything to get their creative juices flowing. And that typically takes maybe one or two questions with the child, and they just start ideas, and I say, that's awesome, write it. We're not, at this point in time, we're not focusing on grammar, we're not focusing on punctuation. We just want them to get their thoughts onto their paper. Then after free write time is over, it can be anywhere from 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes. You definitely want to make sure you develop the stamina of writing with your students so that they are able to write for a long period of time if you are going to use this for a long period of time. So make sure the time that you choose to work on this is appropriate for them. And so things that I look for as a teacher is I can start looking at what can I do to make their writing better. I've been teaching for 10 years, and the thing that I notice every year with our access courses, my students' writing is their lowest domain. And so I really hone in on this activity weekly to find different areas of writing that I can strengthen for my students. So I look for anything very basic, capital letters and periods. Then I'll really look for things that are more complex. As a teacher, I'll look for grammar. I'll look for academic vocabulary. I'll look for introductions, conclusions, depending on the student's level. And that really helps me guide my instruction. What can parents look for? Parents can look for those basic things to help their writer be more confident in their abilities, so they're not spending so much time worrying about the basics in free writing time, and they're really able to let go of that anxiety and they can get their writing done. So things parents can look for are capital letters and periods. Parents can help make sure that words are used correctly, especially if students are writing in their native language. A lot of students sometimes will use their native language to write in the target language, which for my students, 50% of the day is Spanish and the other 50% of the day is English. And I use this activity in one language, and then I will have my students look at it in another language and bridge their own learning so that they can see those connections that they're making. So at home, parents can start helping them see those connections in their native language, such as usage, like are they using the word correctly in their sentence? Is there another word that is stronger that they could use? Or maybe there is a word that your family uses a lot, but you're at school, it'd be a different way of saying it. So parents can look for those types of words to really help their child grow their vocabulary. Another thing parents can look for is just have your child read what they wrote to you back. This then helps target their reading. Anything a child writes, you want them to always have them read it, because that always hones in on that reading skill, which for a lot of students is a lot stronger than their writing, but reading and writing go hand in hand. So if they're writing, they're practicing their phonics, they're practicing their grammar, they're practicing good writing habits. But if we don't have them read it, are they truly understanding what they're doing? So parents can simply just have their child reread anything they write to them, whether it's a list, a sentence, or labels. That way the child is taking ownership of that writing. The next thing parents can do, and it doesn't matter which language you want to communicate in, as long as there's communicating going on, is parents can ask questions about their story. Why did you write this story? Or why did you choose this picture to make lists on? I'm trying to think of more ideas off the top of my head, sorry. But or asking them, in Spanish, this is abeja. What is it in English? Bee. And then they can start having those conversations, making those connections. But now we're talking about their listening skills, because they have to listen to the parent's question, whether it's in English or Spanish. Listening is a skill that all children need to work on, and working on it actively. And then students have to work on their speaking when they answer their parent's question. And a lot of time, what I like about students using these pictures is once you get into those higher level skills, those higher level English language learners, you can start having them go back to their picture or back to their writing for text evidence. And so parents can say, why did you write about that? The kid is going to go back to that picture pretty much naturally, and they're going to say, I saw this, I saw that. Doesn't it look like the bunny's doing this? And it's going to help them make those connections that make them go back to their writing or make them go back to the picture to support their answer. So those are things parents can do at home just to make sure all those domains are being met with your student, especially during this time where students are learning remotely. This is one way you can help your child, is just engaging in conversations about what they're doing, especially when it's their writing, because you hit all four: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So really make sure that you're just communicating with your child will help grow their language, because they're going to have to think about their thinking. And that's what really creates those self-reliant learners, is they are thinking about their thinking and they're able to explain what they're doing. And that's a skill we really want to hone in on for students, whether you're their parent, whether you're teacher, their brother, their sister. These are things we all can be working on together to really support the learning of your child. So I was going to talk about one picture and how you can use this picture no matter what level your child is at. So I grabbed a coloring book. Very simple, easy thing to do. Tons of pictures, meaning that there are tons of opportunities for stories. Or maybe there's an animal on the picture that they know a lot about, creating an opportunity for them to write informational text or just facts about things that they know about these animals. Or it can really connect to anything. Maybe they're learning about life cycles. They can connect to the life cycle of the animal they find. Or maybe it's a photo of history. They can learn something from there too. So it's always great to use art, because it really allows our student to think, and it eliminates that fear of reading. So it allows them to still tap in. All right, so I'm just looking through, and I'm trying to find a picture. So here we go. Here's a quick picture that a student can choose to write about, and they can write it anywhere they want. They can write it on their iPad in their notes section. They can write it on Seesaw, whatever technology device your student uses. It could be pencil and paper. Some students can even just start talking about the picture first before they're writing. So a student whose language level is in education we refer to as level 1 is a student who is just learning new to the language. So things that they can do is they can just take the picture right as it is, and they can label it, and using the best spelling they can, because we don't really want to focus on that. We want to work more on the confidence of them being able to label. They can label and just write girl, hair, flower, eye, water, any word in English that they know, they can just simply write, because that is writing. Labeling is writing. They're working on those phonetic skills. They're working on identifying new words in the target language, and then have them read them back to you. Because then the student really has to focus on those phonics of, did I write it correctly? And if I didn't, they're going to now have to be forced to read it and say it. Now they're really starting to do that, thinking about their thinking, did I write it correctly? And they're doing it on their own without kind of feeling nervous that they didn't write it correctly. And so that's someone who's just starting to learn the language can do something as easy as that with a picture. A level 2 student is someone who's been learning for maybe a few months or maybe a year. It does take 3 to 7 years to learn a new language. So we really just need to make sure we're patient with our students and with our children and give them the opportunity to learn, and don't worry about if they're not getting it right away. It's all part of the learning process. So maybe this student then, instead of labeling, might just make a list. So they'll take a piece of paper in their notebook, and they'll just start writing the things they see. I see a girl, I see a flower pot, I see a flower, and they'll start using those patterns. I see, I see, I see, I see. So they're now working on those high frequency words in the target language. So that would what a level 2 person would be, someone who's been working maybe under a year, I would say, in the new target language. So a level 3 student is someone who's been working for maybe 1 or 2 years, maybe 3 years on the target language. And that would be a student who we want them to start writing simple sentences about the picture. And maybe their goal is to write 3 sentences that explain what the girl is doing. And we want them to start using some academic vocabulary such as transition words, first, second, last. So first, I see a girl watering a flower. Then the flowers need sun to grow. This girl is gardening. And what I like about coloring books sometimes is they have little sentences down there that they can use and get some spelling from. So they can even start out with, gardening is fun. The little girl is gardening, She is growing flowers. So that is a really awesome thing that some color books have, is they have some text there to help your student get started. So then a level 4 student, that is definitely someone who's been at least, 2 to 3 years, 4 years working with the language. We want them to start writing more complex sentences, and we actually want them to start writing complete stories with beginning, middles, and ends. Once upon a time, there was a girl. Make it like a fairy tale. We definitely want to zone in more on the genres that they're writing about. So is it a story? Is it a fairy tale? Is it a poem? So level 4s definitely have more of that academic knowledge to get them to do this. So they might just say, one sunny day, a little girl was gardening in her backyard. So these are definitely more complex sentences. They have more description. They're more elaborative. And that's something we really need to support our students on. And even when you're at home, you can be asking yourself, well, what kind of flower? What color is the girl's hair? How would you describe the girl? And have them get that in their writing. Especially at this stage, we want them to be writing more descriptively. Or they can say, like, I see a daisy. A daisy has 5 petals. In order for a daisy to grow, it needs sun, water, and air, and soil. Now they can start writing informative things about what they see about this picture. And then a level 5 is definitely a student who is just underneath the grade level. So they're able to accomplish and write grade level expectations. They just need a little bit more support, making sure that the organization of their writing is there. So we really want to make sure that they do have that beginning, the middle, and end. But also we want them to start applying themselves and things that they've learned to new material. So that could be something as maybe they're going to use this and they're going to write about the life cycle of a flower. And so that they're using something they already know to make a new product. And that's definitely something we want those level 5 learners to start doing. And those are students who are approaching grade level. And then we come to level 6 and they are writing on grade level. So to continue the growth of that, we want to always just encourage and kind of do all the things that we were doing that I was just previously stating. Look for those simple sentences, look for the developed sentences, and look for them applying what they already know to new things. That way they're transferring the learning, and that we can actually see when they're applying something that they learned to something new, it really does show their ability to transfer their learning. And that's what we look for in our kids, is are they able to take what they learn and apply it to something new. And when we see them doing it, that's when we know they've really started to master a skill. And so that is just what I do with my kids on a weekly basis, to really make sure that I am targeting their speaking, their listening, their reading, and their writing. And it's sometimes really easy to ignore the writing part because you want to work on their speaking. You want to hear what they have to say. For some students, writing, they're very resilient to it. They don't want to do it. Some teachers don't even want to do it. But the more that we practice this with them at school and at home, the better they're going to get. We really want to build their confidence in their writing. So starting with those more basic activities such as labeling and making lists and making even pattern books. I see this. I see a bee. I see a cloud. I see a flower. It's going to not only help their writing, but it's going to help their reading. They're going to become more fluent. So this is just an activity you can even do with your kids at home, and just anything, any book. I got 2 color books here, like I showed you before, magazines, or even if they already have books that have words in them, have them recreate their own story and have them read it to you. But it's super important that when a student does write something, that they take ownership for it and they read it out loud, because we need them to be able to be thinking about their thinking on, does this sound right? Does it look right? And they're going to stop, just kind of like we do as adults. We're like, oh, I need to correct this when we read emails out loud or we read letters out loud. We naturally self-correct. And that's what we want to get our students to start doing, is we want them to start naturally self-correcting themselves, not only when they're reading, but when they're writing. And that's going to help them go back to their work and ask themselves, how can I improve this? And we're going to just keep seeing them cycle through and motivate them to want to become better writers and better readers. So those are 2 really important steps, is if they write something, they need to read it, but then also ask them questions. And you can ask them basic questions about who, what, when, where, or you can ask them questions such as, why did you do this? How does this help you? You can ask them the more deeper thinking questions. And then now they're working on their listening skills, but then also now they have to work on their speaking skills, because they have to respond to you. And definitely, if you are speaking another language that's not the target language, don't be afraid to use it, because we still want to be working on the child's thinking process. And we want to use their entire repertoire of language for them to be able to express their knowledge. So if a kid has half a list in English and half a list in Spanish of words, that's okay, because now we have a great opportunity to ask them, hey, do you know how to say this in Tagalog? Do you know how to say this in Spanish? Do you know how to say this in German? Whatever the child's native language is, you can pull that out. And then you're also you're validating their knowledge. And that's another important thing, parents, when you're at home, no matter if the answer is right or the answer is wrong, validate the fact that they tried without giving up, because that's the most important part. And so that's why I enjoy writing, is because it gives them that ability to start naturally thinking how to correct themselves, but it also allows them pride in the work, because they get to share it, you get to ask questions about it, and we're building that confidence. Once we break through that wall of them being very resistant to writing and nervous, once we break through that wall, we're going to start to see some really great growth coming from them, but also you're going to see that they love writing. So definitely take this time at home to start gathering those random books or those magazines. And if you're running out of ideas for remote learning, say, hey, let's take this picture today and write a story. Or can you write 5 sentences describing this, or 2 sentences? Or can you label this picture? Can you make a list of things you see in these pictures? And then you can help your child write out sentences. And they can be pattern sentences, meaning I see a bird, I see a plane. It can follow that pattern. Or it can be more of, I see a girl gardening. She is using a watering can, something that is a little bit more complex, or you can make really complex sentences using those elaborative skills that I was talking about earlier. So I think that's it, but definitely this is one of my favorite activities I use throughout the week to guide my instruction, but definitely something I encourage parents to use at home because it can definitely help your child break through that barrier of not wanting to write and definitely motivate them to be writers. So thank you so much for listening today. I hope that you guys come back and ask some questions because I am really excited to share my thoughts and my experiences with you through writing. So enjoy, and I hope to hear from you guys soon.